And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, starting off the marine bit here, we'll start with tonight's map. Front weakening as it spreads some moisture into the central Aleutian areas. Mostly cloudy, areas of light snow showers around the southeast quarter of the interior, and some snow showers up here to the north. Otherwise, not much else going on until you get down here. Well, for the Panhandle, gusty northeast winds. Some areas could see gusts of 50 miles per hour or more. This front down here to the south spreads even stronger winds up along the south coast tomorrow. Stays windy elsewhere across the Panhandle. Mostly dry. It looks like all this moisture just grazing the coastline there, or in Dixon Entrance. Some of this moisture spreads back up toward the Kenai Peninsula and more likely into Kodiak Island. Generally cloudy with isolated, widely scattered snow showers in the central interior. Better conditions to the east and west, as well as north of the Brooks Range, with much lighter winds up there tomorrow. And this front new low center pushes up toward the central Aleutians, so periods of rain in that area. And then for Sunday, that front breaks up. The low center pulls off to the northwest there, but this trough close enough to bring some rain or snow into the Pribilof Islands, and then scattered showers for the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, not a bad day, kind of in between systems there for the Aleutian chain. Pretty good over the central interior here, looking at still some snow showers to the north. And this front here kind of rotates northwestward and really weakens, but enough moisture left over to spread rain up to the North Gulf Coast, eastern Kenai Peninsula, eastern Kodiak Island, scattered showers in the Panhandle. Then for tonight, or for tomorrow for the coast, gale warnings here on the south coast. East winds 35 to 40 knots, east at 30 knots on the central coast, and east-northeast 20 to 30 knots for the north coast. Small craft advisories for all of the inside waters tomorrow. 25 knots from the north, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and east at 25 for Stevens Passage. Southeast 20 for, or that's Clarence Strait, east 25. And for Clarence Strait on Sunday, southeast at 20, north 25 knots for Stevens Passage, and 25 to 40 knot winds for Lynn Canal. East winds 25 knots here for the central and south coast on Sunday, and the north coast a little bit lighter, still out of the east at 15 to 20 knots. Cook Inlet north to northeasterlies 20 to 30 knots for the day Saturday. Northeast at 35 knots, Kamishak Bay. East winds 25 knots for the Barren Islands, 30 knots for the western North Gulf Coast, and then gale warnings there for the eastern areas. And Prince William Sound, east winds at about 30 knots. Excuse me. And for the day Sunday, Prince William Sound, northeast winds 15 knots, and northeast 15 to 20 knot winds here for the Cook Inlet area, northeast at 25 for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, and the North Gulf Coast, east to northeast winds 30 knots. Kodiak Island tomorrow, pretty windy, northeast 30 to 35 knots. And for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, northeast at 20 for Bristol Bay. Outlook for Sunday, east to northeast winds 20 to 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay northeast at 20, Kodiak Island northeast winds 25 to 30 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians, we've got east-southeast winds tomorrow at 20 to 30 knots, southeast at 30 knots for Adak and Atchka. Western Aleutians, south to southeast winds 15 to 25 knots. And for the western Aleutians on Sunday, northeast winds 20 to 25 knots, northeast at 30 knots for Adak and Atka, and the Fox Islands looking at easterlies 25 to 35 knots. Southwest coast looking at northeast winds 10 to 15 knots tomorrow. In the Bering Sea, easterlies 20 knots for St. Matthew Island, 25 for the Pribilofs. Northeast at 10 for the Yukon Delta coast, otherwise Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, light and variable. And then those winds north at 10 for Norton Sound on Sunday, northeast 15 for St. Lawrence Island, 20 knots out of the northeast for the Yukon Delta coast, and 25 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. 30 knot winds out there in the Bering Sea for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, variable winds at 10 to 20 knots, east at 25 for the western Arctic coast, with brisk wind advisories for the central and eastern Arctic coast, except here Barter Island to Demarcation Point, looking at gales, easterlies at 35 knots. Much lighter on Sunday, though, 5 to 10 knots out of the east-northeast or the central and eastern coast, southeast to 10 western Arctic coast. Variable winds 5 to 10 knots for the Chukchi Sea.